Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to IBM Code Engine 101, Run Your Container, Code Containers and Batch Jobs workshop. Thank you all so much for coming. So I asked in the chat for you all to share what coding languages you're all currently working in. Interested to see what you all are currently learning and experimenting with. Maybe any tech stacks that you're currently, you've been working on for work or personal projects. So feel free to share in the chat while we get started. Also feel free to share in the chat if you haven't gotten a chance already. If you would like to share and get acquainted with the rest of your peers joining us today in the chat, feel free to share your name and pronouns, your current title or company or program that you're with, where you're from, or maybe where you're joining from while we're all working from home, something you love, and then a quirk, something that's uniquely weird or different about you. I've seen some really interesting things, some professional scuba divers and all kinds of interesting hobbies that people have, giving me ideas because I desperately need a hobby. So a few things just to note. If you scroll to the very, very top, the beginning of the chat, I have posted a bunch of links for you there. Now, I just want to preface, if at any point in time you have issues where the screen seems frozen, or you can't hear me for some sort of reason, or you're having any type of issues, go ahead and refresh your browser. That seems to clear up any of the issues that you might be having with Crowdcast. Also, be sure to join from Chrome browser, and you'll have a lot less problems than you would with Firefox or any other browser. So Chrome and refresh. So as I mentioned before, if you go to the very beginning of the chat, I have some resource links I've shared with you all. So the first one is a link to the slides. You all have comment access, so feel free to comment if anything's not clear, or add comments of some things that you'd like to see, or you know, projects and programming languages. Feel free to leave me comments on there. Here is the GitHub repository for Code Engine that's filled with sample applications and example code and things there for you to get your feet wet and get started with working with Code Engine. So yes, this workshop is being recorded. The recording will be available at this link, which is the same link you all joined with today. So the live stream will convert into a recording at the end of the session. If you would like to follow along, get hands-on with Code Engine today or at any other time, you will need an IBM Cloud account. So this is the link that you can use to sign up for an IBM Cloud account. You can also, let me just update this for you. Call to action. Here we go. If you look at, sorry, I didn't update this before. If you don't already have an IBM Cloud account, feel free to click the button at the bottom of the live stream screen where it says IBM Cloud sign up. You can click there and sign up for an IBM Cloud account through that link as well. There we go. So for all of you who are new, who haven't formally been introduced or acquainted with, welcome. My name is Jenna. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a cloud developer advocate with IBM. I'm currently joining from Detroit. I'm from Detroit. I've been working with IBM in Austin for the past few years and came here during quarantine and got stuck here. So I've been here for the most part since. Something that I love are my dogs. I have Yorkies, and hopefully they will be quiet today. They're upstairs. They seem to be attached to me at all times. And a quark, so something that is unique to me. I have a unique taste for anything tuna, especially tuna melts and tuna sandwiches. And I judge an entire restaurant and all of the food on the menu based on how much effort they put into their tuna sandwich. So if it's on the menu, I will order it and you will be judged. So that's a little bit about me. Like I said, feel free to share in the chat. I would like to give you all an opportunity to get acquainted with Doug, who's going to be joining us today. So Doug, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Doug Davis from IBM, as you can see on the slide. I'm one of the product managers for Code Engine, and I'm here basically just as backup for Jenna.
Thank you, Doug. And Doug will be hanging out in the chat, so if you have any questions, feel free as we go to just post questions in the chat. There's also a section to ask a question. You can post questions in there, and Doug and I will be answering those for all of you as we go along. And there will be time at the end for Q&A, so anything we don't get to, we will have time to catch up at the end. So before we jump in, I'm a big believer in, continuing to grow, continuing to upskill, freshen up your skills. So I've been intentionally pairing free badging and upskilling that IBM provides for free to each of the workshops. So these are the badges that I've worked through, all of these except for one, which is a newer one. But to start, the first, sorry, let me just, there we go. So the first course I have here is our IBM Cloud Essentials badge. So essentially, a badge earner, once completed, will be able to relate how IBM Cloud enables different services from infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service models, and different deployments, so public, hybrid, and private models of cloud computing. So upon completion, you will know how to access IBM Cloud using various tools and interfaces, discover IBM Cloud products or services available for specific functions, and articulate the different ways IBM Cloud delivers services to developers, and summarize core groups of available services. So it's kind of like a really great foundation to everything IBM Cloud. The next badge we have is one of my favorites. So this is the IBM Cloud Application Development Essentials badge. So you'll be able to develop cloud native applications using IBM Cloud offerings like platform as a service, containers as a service, programming languages like Java, Node.js, and frameworks like Spring Cloud, Netflix OSS. You'll be able to leverage design thinking, IBM Cloud Innovate, and IBM Garage method practices, which is really cool. And there's different techniques and accelerators in the overall development lifecycle. So this is a really good badge for developers trying to really develop your hands-on cloud native skills. The next badge we have is the Applied Cloud Development. So upon completion, you'll be able to apply your knowledge of cloud native application development and follow the 12-factor application parameters and the characteristics of building a scalable and resilient cloud application when you need to deliver cloud native application development engagements. So you'll have an understanding of cloud application development using Java, Node.js, Python, knowledge on container configuration and deployment, DevOps toolchain, Agile, and test-driven developments using JUnit, Mocha, and a few others. Yeah, so there's a learning path for this one as well. This one is, I don't know if this has been updated or newer. This is newer to me. The IBM Cloud Core badge. So this will give you an understanding of the basics of cloud technology and be able to describe different cloud platforms and models, including, IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, public, private, and hybrid multi-cloud models. You'll be familiar with terms like virtualization, VMs, containers, object storage, microservices, serverless, cloud native, and DevOps. So this is really getting more familiar with some of the cloud infrastructure, IBM Cloud infrastructure, and different pieces of cloud native infrastructure. The last one I have here for you, I'll get my buttons back, there we go, is the Docker Essentials badge. So if you're looking to learn more and work more with containers, maybe take your application's source code and create container images so that you can leverage them on platforms like Code Engine. This is a really great badge to get you started. And it'll show you how to work with Docker Hub, create containers and solve basic orchestration problems. So let's go ahead and get started. So here we go. Okay. So what exactly is Code Engine, right? I love every time there's a new product or service, and it's kind of like a mystical being. So IBM Cloud Code Engine is actually a fully managed serverless platform that runs your containerized workloads. This includes web applications, microservices, event-driven functions, and even batch jobs. So Code Engine, it even will build container images for you using their source to image feature as well. Pause that so that doesn't make a noise. So kind of highlighting some of the really great things about Code Engine and what it can do for you. So I think Code Engine is really great for anyone that wants to spend more time building out the meat and potatoes of your application, really focusing more on your REST APIs or your front end or whatever parts of your application you're responsible for building, and spending less time worrying about dependencies and infrastructure and all of these pieces, right? So I always equate it to you always have that one guy on the team that makes sure all of your dependencies are great and everything's up to date and the builds are successful and all of these things. So Code Engine can take care of a lot of those problems for you. So what Code Engine can do is it can actually create container images from source code with the source to image feature. It allows you to, so one thing to note here too is, so it pulls your source code and creates the container image for you. It also supports both Dockerfile and Cloud Native build pack. So you can store your source code in private repositories and push your images to private registries, and Code Engine will be able to access them. Code Engine takes care of all of the handles and hides all of the cluster management, including provisioning, configuring, scaling, and managing servers. So you don't need to worry about any of the underlying infrastructure. Code Engine is fully integrated into IBM Cloud, so you can take full advantage of the catalog of IBM Cloud services, like any IBM Watson services, AI and machine learning, analytics. So it allows you to really seamlessly integrate any of our products or services into your application. It also automatically scales your workloads up and down, and even down to 0 when there are no active requests. So with Code Engine, you're only paying for the resources that you're actually consuming. Code Engine is built on top of or open source technologies such as Kubernetes, Knative, STO, and Tecton, and it keeps your apps and your jobs really flexible and portable. So what I would like to do is pass over to Doug and have him kind of give you more of a deep dive into what Code Engine is, what it can do, and let's see, it's here. There we go. And any questions you have, I'll be watching in the chat for as well.
Yep. Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, so I apologize for this chart being a little bit of an eye chart, but it saves us the trouble of having to actually bounce around between different slides. Basically, at a high level, you can kind of think of Code Engine as basically a merging of all of the various as-a-service containerized platforms merged into one, right? So whether your workload or your container is going to be running a function or a serverless function, whether it's there for a platform as a service type application, meaning a web page, 12-factor app type stuff, whether you're running a batch job, meaning something that doesn't necessarily respond to HTTP requests, but rather it's more like a standalone executable that you run on demand, and then when it's done, it goes away. or you're responding to HTTP events like a request kind of a thing, I mean like an eventing infrastructure kind of a thing, it doesn't matter. As long as you can containerize your workload, Code Engine can run it for you. And we're going to run it in the cloud. And as Jenna said, we're going to manage all the infrastructure behind the scenes for you. Now, it's not just a matter of managing the infrastructure. We also present to you a simplified developer experience, meaning even though we're running Kubernetes and Knative and Istio and other open source technologies under the covers, you actually don't even know that, you don't need to know that they're actually there, right? So you don't have to actually learn kube control to talk to Kubernetes and all that other stuff, okay? We've simplified everything to the point where you only need to focus on giving us the inputs into what you want to deploy, meaning, as Jenna said, give us your source code if that's where you want to start the flow. Give us your container image if that's where you want to start the flow. It's up to you. Then you just tell us the runtime semantics that you want for those workloads, meaning do you want it to scale based upon work on load coming in? Do you want a certain amount of memory and stuff like that? Yes or no? Just give us the raw numbers or runtime semantics you want, and we'll figure out how to make the infrastructure match your desired semantics. Okay, so you as a developer can basically toss your applications over the wall and just say, go run this for me. Okay, then you can get back to coding, which is where you're supposed to be spending your time as a developer. You should not be spending your time learning Kubernetes, managing Kubernetes, or anything else related to the infrastructure. Okay, now it all sounds nice and good and stuff. So let's talk a little bit about what you can actually do in there. Okay, as I said, and this is basically in that blue box on the right-hand side, it's a managed platform running in the cloud. So we're going to scale the infrastructure out for you automatically. And by scaling, I don't just mean your application. If the infrastructure, meaning the Kubernetes clusters that are running behind the scenes, need to scale out, we do all that for you. And you only pay, as she said, when your applications are actually running. If everything scales down to 0, you're not charged at all. Okay, we'll do everything that you could possibly want relative to these applications. We're going to do auto scaling based upon requests coming in, even down to 0, as Jenna said. We'll also actually support, even though I don't mention on here, scaling based upon resource usage, right? So rather than number of requests coming in, based upon CPU and memory usage, we can scale up and down there as well. We're going to build in security automatically for you, meaning you don't have to worry about setting up the SSL certificates, managing the load balancers, managing runtime isolation between the various workloads running in the cluster. We do all that for you. As she said, we'll also build your images for you if you want to start out with source code. Okay, you can integrate with IBM Cloud services. And by that, we mean not just that you can talk to them, but if you tell us which ones you want to talk to, we will inject the credentials and the coordinates of your instances into your application. So your application doesn't have to go figure out where the credentials are, figure out what secrets they're stored in. They'll be available to you as environment variables automatically. Okay. Now, unlike other platforms where there's going to be limits in terms of how long your things can run for, or how much memory they can use, we don't have those limits. Basically, if you want something to run for 12 hours, go for it. If you want high memory applications, go for it. We're not going to stop you. Okay. So unlike other platforms, you don't have the artificial limits imposed on you. Okay, event-driven stuff. You can connect up to event producers. So for example, if you want to get events from Cloud Object Storage as things in your bucket change, we can help you connect up to those event streams and deliver them to your application automatically for you. So you don't have to understand how the events actually get sent into the system, whether it's over HTTP or Kafka or anything else. We will deliver it to your application in a single fashion, meaning HTTP request. So all you have to worry about is that one HTTP server running in your application. You don't have to figure out how to talk Kafka or anything else. Okay. We support private and public registries for your container images, private and public GitHub repos for your source code. And so basically anything you possibly want to do relative to your application, we'll manage for you and help you get started. Now, one important thing to note here is I talked about the simplified user experience, so you don't even have to know Kubernetes is there. And that's really cool, and we like that. And Jenna's going to show you through the demos how Kubernetes isn't even exposed to you, and she won't even mention Kubernetes during the demo except when talking about what happens to be going on behind the scenes. But if you happen to want to talk to Kubernetes, or perhaps you have existing CI/CD pipelines that use kube control or whatever to get their job done, you can use those. Okay? We're not going to stop you from talking to Kubernetes if you really want to. We prefer if you didn't, because we think we present a simplified user experience. But if for some reason you really love Kubernetes, go for it. You can run your existing Kubernetes workloads in Code Engine if that's what you want to do, and integrate them with your other applications that maybe use the simplify user experience, because they're all still running on Kubernetes. All we've done is make it easier to get access to the underlying infrastructure. Okay, so I know I went through a whole bunch of things there, but that's Code Engine at sort of very, very high level. So let me go back in and hand it back to Jenna so she could take you through the next part of the presentation.
Perfect. Thank you, Doug. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our dev environment. Now, since Code Engine takes care of all of those infrastructure pieces for you, all we need to do is sign up for an IBM Cloud account. So again, this is the link, and there's also a link at the bottom of the screen to sign up for an IBM Cloud account. You will need to sign up for a pay-as-you-go account in order to use the Code Engine console. We do have a free tier. We will kind of talk about that in a minute. But essentially, you need to have a card on file in order to access the Code Engine console. You will get a flag thrown at you when you try to create a project that it will ask you to upgrade your account. So if you have a free tier account, you'll need to upgrade to a pay-as-you-go account. So if you haven't already, go ahead and log into your IBM Cloud account, and we will go ahead and get started. So let me hold this up here. There we go. Okay. So when you log into your IBM Cloud account, you should see your dashboard. So here we are. So you can type in Code Engine from the search bar along the top. You can also click on Catalog. So this will actually give you a lot of recommended services. So here, so if you go to the catalog, you can kind of explore other products and services we have as well. So again, from here, you can just type in Code Engine. We're going to go ahead and click on it and get started. Okay. Here we go. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get started with an example project from a container image. So here, as you can see, Code Engine, within the Code Engine console, we have projects, the CLI, and some different documentation. So again, it's going to auto scale your workloads for you, and you're only going to pay for the resources you consume. So what we have here is we can get started from a container image. We also can get started from source code. We are going to look at both of these today. We just have a review here over some of the features. So Code Engine is truly serverless. You can run your batch jobs, which we're also going to do today. And as Doug had mentioned, it's based on Kubernetes, which we don't have to worry. We're not going to have to worry about it all today. Again, we have an always free tier, and we'll take a look at how much we're consuming when we do these example applications today. And then we have some Code Engine tutorials as well. So to get started, what we're going to do is we're going to create an application from a container image. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to type in IBM COM/HMO. And again, I did give you access to all of the slides. So all of the commands and everything that we're entering today are included within the individual slide we're working on. And they are click-by-click slides. So if you get stuck or you need to find anything, everything is in the slides. So you shouldn't get lost or anything. So again, so we're going to start with running a container image. I'm going to enter this in, and I'm going to click Start Creating. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to give it a name. So there's a bunch of different options that you'll see here on the page. So first of all, we can run your code to serve HTTP requests. We can also create a job and run your code to perform a task. So what we're going to do is we're going to create an application. Apps and jobs are similar in the sense that they're both containers running code. But the biggest difference is that applications are event-driven. So what that means is that they respond to incoming HTTP requests, and they do work based on those requests. So whether it's sending information, sending back a web page or a REST API, if it responds to HTTP requests, then it's an application. And Code Engine will scale your app up and down based on how much traffic is coming into your application. Jobs, on the other hand, do not have HTTP servers running in them because they do not respond to HTTP requests. So they're more like run to completion workloads. So they're started when they're told, they execute some code, and then they stop when they're done. If you need it to scale, then you're going to need to tell Code Engine how many instances you want when you want and when you tell it to run them. So we'll take a look at this a little bit later as well in just a minute, but we're going to start with the application, but we will dive more into jobs as well. Okay, so I'm going to give, I'm going to change my name here to, okay, well, yeah, so by default, Code Engine is going to generate a random name, but we're going to call it something more meaningful. So we're going to be looking at a health insurance application. So I'm going to change the name to HMO. There we go. Took a second. Okay. The next thing we are going to do is we're going to scroll down here and we're going to select a project. So I'm going to select my Code Engine project here. And then, as you can see here, we have the image reference that I entered in at the previous step. And so we're referencing the image, the container image we want to run. And we have public registry access. So the default listening port is 8080. If for some reason you need to change this, if you need to be listening on another port, you can change this here. This is actually really nice. So if you're listening for requests on a different port, you can change this to 5000 or 3030 or whatever you're listening on. We have some other settings here as well. We're not going to worry about those right now. We'll look more into those a little later. So I'm going to go ahead and create my application. So this is now deploying my application to Code Engine. Okay. As you can see here. Okay, so with just one piece of data, the container image name that we gave it, we've been able to start the process of deploying our application to Code Engine. So while it's completing the setup, let's talk about some of the things that we didn't have to think about or do in order for this to happen, right? Normally deployment, there's some steps involved. All we had to do was give it a container, the name of our container image we wanted to use. Since this is leveraging Kubernetes, we didn't have to deal with any kube resources directly, not deployments, replica sets, pods, or even containers. We just gave Code Engine our image, no networking to configure, We didn't have to manually set up an external endpoint, no load balancer to create or configure when we scale our app. And in the time that we were able to talk about a few things, it's already ready to go. So let's go ahead and view our deployed application. So we're going to do that by just clicking open application URL. Okay. Perfect. As you can see here, we have this My Insurance application. Looks like we have some managed plans. Right now, we're probably serving 0 customers, and we have processed 0 customer records. So I just want to point that out and note. What we're going to need to do is copy the application URL for the next step. So I'm going to just copy this. Another thing I'd like to point out here, if you take a look at the top, notice the URL is HTTPS. So what's really fantastic is we get built-in security by default deploying the Code Engine. So from the developer's perspective, we're done. We have an internet-facing application that's secure, and it will scale and always be ready for requests, all with just one bit of information. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is the Code Engine auto scale feature. So one of the features that Code Engine gives you is auto scaling. So what we're going to do is take a look at that in action. And we're going to do that by looking at a load generator tool that we have. I have also included, actually, let me give you this all here. So if you're following along, it's in the slides, but I'll put it here as well. Okay, so this tool is just for demos. It's not part of Code Engine. But what it's going to do is generate a load against our application so that we can show and demonstrate what happens when we get a lot of traffic hitting it. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to paste my link. So this is the load generator tool. I'm going to go ahead and paste my link in here and hit generate load. Oh, sorry.
While Jen is doing that, I just want to point out, because some people get confused by this. The load generator tool is just a tool we created for demo purposes. It is not part of Code Engine, so don't go looking for it. It's just for demos and presentations like this. It's not a real thing part of Code Engine.
Yes. Yes, this is just going to help us demonstrate that the traffic hitting, potentially hitting our site. So we're gonna manually create that. Okay, so there we go. So what I want to show you here is, so the tool is generating a continual load from 1,200 clients for 30 seconds, and each time it hits the application, it causes the creation of a new customer. So if we go back and look at our application, now we'll see the number of proudly served customers increasing. So as it's generating that load, that number is increasing. So now that we're done creating the traffic to our application, the next thing we're going to do is, it's a little tiny, but if you look in this bottom corner here, I kind of zoomed in the slides. We're going to hit this pause button. So what we're doing is we're going to hit the pause checkbox in the corner so that we can stop the browser from trying to update. So without doing this, we'll ping the server every second, and that'll force our application to never scale down completely because it's always busy. So what we're going to do is go back to our console now. And oh, there we go. Oh, you know what? I waited too long. I'm gonna run this again. So it happens pretty fast. So as we're generating the load here, you'll see this number increase.
Well, you paused it, so that's why.
Oh, sorry. Whoops. I was like, wait a minute. Okay, hold on. Let me just refresh. There we go. Let's try this again.
Well, no, you got to unpause the HMO app.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. Okay, got confused. There we go.
Now it's going back.
Now it's fine. Okay, so now it's going up. And when we look at our console here, as you can see, we have, actually it happened so quickly that we didn't even see it happen. So what happened was the number of instances is now up to 10 as we're generating that load to hit our application. Why 10? We have 1,200 clients. Shouldn't it be 1,200 instances? Well, we're going to take a look at our runtime. So we had a question about setting maximums and minimums. So we're able here to designate the minimum number of instances we want to create and the maximum as well. So when we look at the concurrency, this is our request at the bottom here. So this is the maximum number of concurrent requests per instance and the timeout for the requests. So we're allowing 100 concurrent requests. What this means is that each instance of our app can handle 100 requests at a time. So why not 12 instances then? So what we're going to do is look at the number of instances that we have designated here with our maximum and minimum. So if we look at the maximum number of instances, by default, it has 10 in there. So this is why it stopped scaling to 10. So if we look here. So this is why it stopped scaling at 10. Without this value, it would have scaled even higher. So what's really fantastic is that you're able to control your costs and avoid runaway scaling if you need to. And again, so I'm going to go back and pause this now that that's done running. So when we look at the minimum number of instances here, there we go. There we go. The minimum number defaults to 0. So this allows you to also control the lower bound of instances. If you want one instance to always be up and ready for incoming requests, meaning you don't want any cold start delay, then we can set this to 1. I'll leave that at 0 as now, for now. So I have this, should be, oh, I don't want to do this. Cancel. Okay. So if we look at the top left corner, sorry, this is, oh, sorry, sticking. Okay. Having some sticky internet. Okay. So while we were talking about our runtime, so our number of instances and our request concurrency, within that amount of time since I paused my application, you can look in the top left corner that the number of instances has actually gone down to 0. So no load equals scaling down to the minimum number we have set here, which is 0. So you get automatic scaling of your application without doing anything. So we're going to go back to our application for just a second. We're going to uncheck the pause box. So we're going to unpause the application so that it'll update the number of customers and records processed automatically for us. So we're going to go back to the console. So when the UI decides to auto refresh, as we can see it already did, you'll see that the number of instances went back to 1. So now that we have our application running, and let's say our company has was bought out, and we need to update our application to reflect our new company name. So what we're going to do is we're going to deploy version 2 of our application. So we're going to navigate to the code tab. There we go. And what we're going to do here is we're going to modify the container image. So we're going to modify our image to point to version 2. So what we're going to do here is change this HMO to HMO v2. And now we're going to save our updates. Notice that the number of instances here is 1 because we unpaused our browser. So remember, when we paused it, it went down to 0. So we paused it. We didn't have any traffic coming in, so it auto-scaled down to 0 because we didn't have any load. Excuse me. So now that we've unpaused it, we have 1 instance. And what we're going to do is update our application to point to our image version 2. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save and Deploy. As you can see, it's deploying. We have 1 instance current, and then we're going to open the application URL when it is finished deploying. See. Okay. So as you can see now, we have, oops. Notice that there are 2 instances. We have the old and the new one. We need 2 during the mitigation of traffic. We're going to take a look at revision and traffic in just a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the application URL, and now we have the new version. So this was, again, so this was coming from our HMO container image, and this is coming from our HMO v2 container image. So now we have 2 versions of our application that we've deployed with Code Engine. As you can see, we have our 2 instances here. The next thing we are going to take a look at is revision and traffic. So as you can see here, we have, oops. So you can see alongside here, we have revision and traffic. So let's go ahead and pull that up. So in this section, you'll see all of the versions or revisions of your application. So let's say you have, 5 different versions of your application. Let's say you're doing A/B testing, or let's say you are, in this instance, doing an update to your UI or a new rebrand or design changes. This will allow you to see all of the versions or revisions of your application. So today, this is just a read-only list. So if we look here, 100% of our traffic is going to this HMO2. So this is the V2 of our application. It's getting 100% of the traffic right now. And this is our latest container image. So this is just a read-only list right now, but very soon what you'll be able to use this for is in order to do traffic splitting. So you'll be able to control how much of the incoming traffic goes to which version. And if you don't want all of it to go to the latest. So if you want to split up traffic, between multiple versions, 50% on one version, 50% on the other, or however you choose to split up your traffic, you'll be able to specify what percentage of the traffic you want to go to which version. So we spent some time talking about all of the infrastructure and runtime features available. But remember, we did all of this with just 2 pieces of information: the application name and the image location. That's it. That's all we needed to deploy our application to Code Engine. So everything we did here is the exact same for any other kind of HTTP application. So for example, if you have just a function with no UI, you can deploy it the same way. People can talk to it via your REST API, and it'll scale the same way your web application did automatically. If you can containerize, essentially, if you can containerize it, Code Engine can host it. What's important to note is that while in Code Engine, all interactions are HTTP based, this doesn't mean that messages over other protocols will not be supported in the future. So in the not too distant future, you'll be able to get events and messages from many producers over other protocols, such as Kafka, and those will automatically be converted into an HTTP request and delivered to your application. So your application won't ever need to know how messages and events arrive. They just need to listen over HTTP. So the next thing we're going to do is take a look at creating batch jobs. So what if the ask you want to perform isn't really a web-like application? What if it's more like a traditional task where it's just a standalone execution that will do something like process a batch of data and then just exit, then just stop. So it's not really sitting there waiting for some incoming request or event to initiate its execution. For example, say we're a hospital and we want to have hundreds, thousands, or millions of patient records that we need to process each night. How do we deal with that kind of task, right? Millions, that's a lot. That's a really big, task. Would probably take a really long time. So we have batch jobs for these types of scenarios. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to your Code Engine project. So again, if you remember in the beginning, I selected my Code Engine project. So I'm going to click back. So it's really just one directory back. So here is my Code Engine project. As you can see here, we have an overview. We can take a look at the current resource allocation. So it looks like I have 2 instances, my total CPU, and my total memory here as well. It also shows me when my last run was submitted and when my last revision was created. I can also look at my applications, my jobs, any image builds, registry access, and then secrets and config maps. So we're going to take a look at that a little more in detail in just a minute. So first thing I'm going to do is click on the Jobs tab. And I'm going to click Create to create a new job. So you'll see that this page looks a lot like the app create page, and that's because for the most part, they're the same. The only difference is that on this page, you won't see any of the auto scaling options since the job won't scale based on load. And we'll look at more on that later. Like the application, we're going to just give it a name and our image. So I'm going to include, I'm going to call it, give it a name. I'm just going to call it task. And then the image reference is going to be HMO task. So again, it has all these other things, a few things at the bottom going on. We don't need to worry about those right now. All we're doing is telling Code Engine where to find the container image with our executable. Nothing more complicated than that. Like with the app, we're going to leave all the other options within their default values and then just click Create. And our job was successfully created. So it was that simple. Now that we've defined our job, it's important to note that unlike applications where once you create it, you're going to get something running, with a job, the first step defines the job. It doesn't actually run anything yet. So the point is that we've defined the job definition, and now we can run it over and over without having to redefine it each time. So what we're going to do is hit the submit job button. So I'm going to scroll down to the bottom here. As you can see here, we have an area here to show our job runs. I'm going to click submit job. And what I'm going to do here, so we can specify some additional configuration options, or we can override fields from the job definition we want. So as you can see, we have CPU, memory, number of job retries, and the job timeout. So all we're going to change here is the number of instances. We're going to change it to 10. And then we're going to click submit job. So I could have also specified an array indices value. So each instance of our job will get a unique ordinal value passed in an environment variable. So that way each one can know its position in the list of instances and can use that to know which portion of the piece of work it needs to work on. This value could be something like 1 to 10 or 1 to 9 or 1, 3, 5 or any mixture. The point is that you can choose ordinal values if you only want to run certain ones. With the rest of the default, that we just kept all of our default values for this particular job, which is almost finished running. So here is where we can actually view the job, and we can see the status of it running. So it looks like we're running 4 out of 10. So if we go back to our application page, this customer records process is increasing here. So as we're running our job, we can watch the number of customer records processed increase very quickly. Now, if we look here, so we have 10 instances of our job task container running in parallel, and each is processing 10% of the records. So each task is going to run until its work is completed. The job tasks process all of the customer records, and results are then stored back in our persistent storage. And we can take a look at our configuration here as well. So we have our image reference here, our memory, CPU, array indices, and our job timeout. And this was all from our default settings. And that's it. So we've deployed an application to Code Engine, and we have also created a batch job and run that task as well. So just to review kind of everything we did, because it goes really fast, because there's very few steps that we as developers need to do in order to do a lot of work. So Code Engine is handling a lot of work, a lot of the work on the back end, all of the auto scaling pieces for us. So what we just did is we created an internet-facing application by just providing the image location. That's all we gave it. We came up with a name for it, but the only piece of information we gave was the image location. With just that, we got quite a few built-in features. So what we received was an external endpoint, HTTP and HTTPS. So we got a secure application just as a bonus. We got a load balancer. Auto scaling application based on load, which again scales to 0 by default. And we also got a rolling upgrade without any downtime as we deployed a new version. So as you can see here, we still have version 1 and version 2 of our application. And as you can see here, so we have both of these versions from our 2 different images for our 2 different versions of our application. And we have our customer records process here from our batch job that we just run. So when we created the job, so the job, again, is a non-HTTP based piece of code. So many of the same runtime configurations are available as the application. However, obviously the endpoint-based ones don't apply. And the load balancer external endpoint as well. So we invoked the job by telling it how many instances we wanted to run, which we said we designated we wanted to run 10 instances. Something to keep in mind is that for the most part, all we ever configured is the image name, right? Between our version 1 and version 2 and our HMO task that we ran. And then for batch, the number of instances, and that's it. So container images and number of instances are the only things that we modified. Obviously, there are a lot of other options available, but with smart defaults, as I've just shown you, you should be able to get the bulk of your workloads deployed and do very minor tweaks for the others. So one thing I want to show you is, it's really, the UI is really easy to use and really quick. It doesn't require too much clicking and poking around. But for those of you who like to work in the CLI from the command line, like I prefer to, I want to just show you how quick and easy it is to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do here is, the first thing you'll need to do is install the Code Engine CLI. So this is just to show you, I have all of the steps, installation and all of those pieces in the slides to do, for you guys to do at home, but just to show you how quick it is. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a Code Engine project. I did something. You know what? I don't want to take up too much time. So I want to show you here. There we go. I want to just show you what this looks like. So this is it. So one line of code to run for creating a new project, we just give it a name. One line of code for creating a new application from a container image. And again, the only pieces we're giving it here is a name and the image location. To run the load generator, again, we are just telling it the name and the image location so that it can update our application. To create a batch job is just one line of code. Again, we're just giving it a name and the image location. And then running the batch job, one line of code, giving it a name. And then here, we're specifying the array indices here. So here, so this is what it looks like. I think I may have accidentally logged out of my account. So one line of code. So I created a project named Demo, JWritten. I created an application called the same thing from our IBM Com HMO application. Here I ran the sorry. It's, I think I'm stuck. So just one second. So here I ran the load generator. Okay, there we go. I got unstuck. Internet issues. Here I ran the load generator here. Again, project name, container image. Here I ran a job, just gave it a name and the container image for the task. And I'm sorry, I created the job, and then here I ran the job. I just told it the name of the job I wanted to run and specified the array indices. So the next thing I would like to show all of you, let me get this back up here. There we go. I'm going to go back here, back to the Code Engine console. So the next thing I want to show you all how to do is, let's see. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you all how to do is deploy an app from source code. So again, I want to show you. Okay, so you will need to create a container. I'm sorry, an IBM Container Registry namespace, which again, I have those steps in the slides as well, but I already have all of those. I already have a namespace set up, which is the only prerequisite for doing that. So what we're going to do is we're going to create an application from source code. So we're going to use the example code that we have here. What's also really nice is that there's already example code here for you to use, so you don't have to like go look at the repository or try to find something online. It's right here. So if you need to get to the repo, it's right here. So I'm going to click Start Creating. Again, we have this application. So I'm going to just update the name here. Let's see. So we have this Code Engine app. I'm going to say app from source code demo. Cool. I give it a name. As you can see here, here's a source code. Here's a source code URL. I'm going to click Specify Build Details. So again, as you can see here, we have the source repository, the branch name. So what's really nice is like if you're working on an application and you have, let's say your main or master branch, or you have develop branch, or let's say you have different versions deployed, you know, let's say you have, you know, V1, V2, however you like to manage your repository, structure your project in your repo. All you need to do is give it the source repository and the branch name. So whichever branch you want to deploy, it defaults to main, but you can change it. Or let's say there's an alternate root folder, you can specify the context directory here. So this is really nice. So I'm going to just, everything's how I need it to go here. So I'm going to click Next. So we automatically, the strategy is automatically Docker file. It gives me a timeout and build resources. I don't need to make any changes. And then the output here is the registry server. So this is with IBM's Container Registry service. This is the host name. Here's my access. Now, remember I mentioned that I created a namespace. So here's where I can select my namespace, right here. Okay. And then it automatically gives me the repository image name, and I can click Done. And as you can see, oh, sorry. And then I can click Create. So our build is created, our build has been submitted. So have you ever, I'm sure, and we've all experienced this, you're trying to run the build for your application so that you can deploy it, right? And your build fails. And you're like, oh, like what dependency is missing? What issue is going on? A build can fail for like 50 million different reasons. We don't have to worry about all of that. We just said, hey, this is the repository that our project is in, and this is the branch that we want to deploy. This is the branch containing the version of the application we want to deploy. So now it's running the image build. And once that is completed, we will be able to view the application. May still be having sticky issues. I'll refresh my internet. I'm having some issues here. So once we deploy our application, one of the things I want to show you is kind of what we talked about earlier was updating the configuration, which we did already with. We took a look at what options we had available with the runtime and updating a different version in the code tab. So what I'm going to do. So this is our deployed application. So it's just, you know, some sample text, but this is our deployed application here. And as you can see, we have one instance running. So I want to just show you here again. So when we look at our code tab, right? So these are our image build details here. We can edit those details. Let's say I'm like, hey, you know what? We're having some issues with the new version. There's some bugs in the code. Let's revert back to, you know, V1 that's on our V1 branch. We can just update our branch here, change that, and then we can save and deploy. What we can also do here, so again, our default is that we have here is 0 and 10 for minimum and maximum number of instances. So we mentioned earlier, if you want to, let's say you want to have one minimum number of instances that's always listening for a request. So you don't, you know, you have things that are running that you need to always be listening for a request for. You don't want to have any downtime. So I can change the minimum number of instances, and then I can save and deploy. Submit the build. Perfect. And then as you can see, we have our first build and our second build. Okay, and then we still have our application up and running here. So the other thing I wanted to show you is environment variables. So Doug mentioned earlier, let's say you have Watson machine learning or a chatbot or you know, some sort of data model or natural language classifier or any type of IBM product or service, the integration, app ID, for instance, for handling your authentication for your application. This is where you can store those secrets and environment variables. So within here, and this is specific to this application that we have here. So we're able to add and edit environment variables here. So a big issue, especially in the last couple of years, I'm sure we've all seen, is secrets, right? Vulnerabilities, secrets getting put in places that aren't very secure, data getting out from, you know, hacks and things like that. So just to keep in mind, so environment variables are used for configuring data. So if you want to store credentials, you want to store them as secrets, not literal values or config maps. So, and you also have options here. You can reference to a full secret, or you can reference to a key in a secret as well. So if you add a secret, you can then reference the key for that secret. So access tokens, refresh tokens, right? And the actual secret is hidden. So let's just see here. So if I want to say, you know, thing is 10, right? Have this here. I can also add a full secret. So as you can see here, we have operator tokens. So these are secrets that other people have already added. I don't want to mess with any of their secrets. But as you can see here, the definitions. So instead of putting these in your YAML files or any other place in GitHub that's not secure, you can add your tokens and your credentials and secrets here so that they're not embedded in your code in any way, and they're extremely secure, and they're only being accessed when you need to access or use the service that you're integrating in. Go back. And now that I think between, I don't know if it's people going home, but there's a certain time of day where everything for me just sticks a little. So again, this is our live application. This is what it looks like. So I want to say congratulations to all of you. You have just deployed your first application from a container image to Code Engine. You have built and run your first batch job from an image to Code Engine, and you have just deployed your first application from source code to Code Engine as well. So congrats, you should all give yourselves a big pat on the back. I would like to, we have some time here to answer questions. So before we go ahead and, we have plenty of time for Q&A. I just want to mention, please, if you would be so kind, we have a very brief, and I mean very brief feedback survey. It's only 2 questions. Mark, so the issue you are having is you logged into IBM Cloud from the command line. What you need to do is target a resource group. So I would run IBM Cloud target, -G default. There you go. Once you do that, everything will be fine. And again, in the slides, I have all of the commands there as well. So I start in the notes with the login and targeting a resource group. So if you want to run things from the command line, anything with Code Engine, you'll need to log in with your IBM Cloud login, and then you'll need to target a resource group, which so I'm pretty sure, Doug, I'm pretty sure default with a capital D is the correct default group. So for pretty much for all external accounts, the default group is capital D default for the resource group. So again, I'd like to, if you want to take a second to fill out the feedback survey. Also, I'll put it up here so you all can see it. Also, next week we will have part 2. So it will be Code Engine 201, deploying applications from source code. That will be next Wednesday, same time, same place. We'll see you on on Crowdcast at the same time. Let's see. I also have, again, all of the slides and everything listed at the top of the chat. None of that will go away when the live stream ends. So if you need to access any part of that, it will be available for you. If you would like to check out more content, more slides, more examples, or maybe you reference this later, I do upload everything to my YouTube as well. So you can feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. Follow my YouTube channel as well. I have everything there as well. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. You can also post them in the Ask a Question, and we'll take some time to answer some questions for all of you. No rush if you're still okay. So looks like Mark's got things up and running. Ah, okay. Yeah, so I will, I'll add that to, so next week we're gonna do kind of more of a deep dive, hands-on from the command line. So we'll all be working from the command line next week. So I'll show you how to deploy apps from source code, do some cool stuff with it, get rid of any applications or jobs you're not using. So we'll spend some more time to do all of that. Create a container registry instance for you. So if you want to save your container images there, if you want to pull from Docker Hub, you can also do that. So we'll be spending a lot more time getting more into the nitty-gritty details of playing around with all of the features of Code Engine next week. So thank you all so much for coming. Again, we'll hang out for a few more minutes in case you have any questions. So if you're working on things right now and something gets stuck, we'll hang out for a few minutes to help you with those. So feel free to just post them in the chat. Yeah, thank you all so much for coming. And we'll be updating, and I'll be putting together more content, showing you how to integrate some IBM Cloud services in. I do a lot of work with machine learning. So if any of you, are working with Watson Studio's Cloud Pak for Data services or working with data models, we'll show you how to hook those up in a not too distant future workshop as well. And here's the information for next week for the part 2 of our workshop. Then I also have at the end here all of the event resource links, certifications for you all as well. And places where you can connect with IBM Developer on all social platforms. So wherever you're at, I'll meet you there, give you some content, show you how to do some cool stuff. And feel free to connect with me. So here's my link tree as well. You'll be able to access any of the resources and workshops on theirs too. And Doug just posted the GitHub repository for Code Engine. It's listed in the slides and at the top as well. Lots and lots and lots of sample code and examples for Code Engine. Highly, highly recommend. Posting the chat. So if you want to register for part 2 of the workshop, I've posted that in the chat as well. Yeah, thank you. Thank you all so much for coming. And this yeah, Mark, let's see if that cleared up the issue you're having. right, thank you all so much for coming. Doug, thank you so much for joining. And I'm gonna go ahead and shut down the live stream, but Mark we can still see your chats and your messages in the chat to answer any questions. All right, thank you all so much, and we'll see you all next week.